I'm trying to figure out where to start with you, but I'm going to start with this because you've gone from Washington. Yes, thank you. You've gone from Washington to Wall Street.
Right.
Ben Bernanke's gone from Washington to Wall Street effectively. What do you make of that?
Look, I think it's normal. I had the pleasure of spending 10 years at J.P. Morgan in financial service, went into the government. A lot of people have the opportunity to go into government and then back to Wall Street or whatever industry. I think that's healthy, to be frank with you. A lot of people are cynical about that. But I think it's good. And I think that bring that expertise from government into the private sector and the understanding of government and how challenging it is, and vice versa. I think is an enormous attribute that when you go around the world, a lot of governments, a lot of countries frown on that and look at that. And like China, they look at me like, well, wait a minute, you're in the private sector and you were in government? How does that work? But I think it's a strength of our system, not a weakness. There can be abuses, and you've got to watch for those. But I think overall it's really healthy for our system.
What about the impression, though, that's inevitably created, you know, that a guy like Bernanke in this case, we just happen to be talking about him, is effectively trading on his public service, you know, to make...
Is he trading on his public service or his expertise?
Hey, I'm just raising the question.
Yeah, I think, well, it's a question that right now is really
I think that's
strongly...
That's how some people look at it.
Absolutely, and they wonder whether you're taking advantage of the knowledge or the experience you had in government. But the fact is, these are people that the private sector then need, because their perspective in the private sector, I think a lot of people in the private sector really don't understand government. They're frustrated by it, no doubt about it. They complain about it, they criticize it,
all right,
they're cynical.
And do you think that many people in the government really understand the financial industry?
No, that's what I'm trying to say.
Warren?
That's what I'm saying. I'm saying it goes both ways. But the people in the private sector have to understand that the complexity of governing is really much more difficult than running a business, even though businesses are difficult to run. But the complexity in government, whether it's the the Fed, whether it's the White House, it's a very different model, and the idea that you could take one and impose it on the other, and what works in the private sector can work in the public sector or vice versa, just isn't true.
What does the financial industry need to do then to help educate the government and get them more comfortable? Because right now it still seems that whether it's populist opinion or many, many people in the legislature just look at the financial industry as public enemy number one.
Well, I think we came out of a financially driven recession, okay? And many of us have done well with the recovery. Many people in the country have not done well with this recovery. So I think a lot of people in Washington and in legislatures around the country look at the success that's happened over the last couple of years as the recovery has come and said, when is that going to come down to the average person?
Yeah,
and
but the Fed
so the understanding,
the
Fed, right, the Fed has made interest rates at zero, and that's the policy, and the Congress has not responded with fiscal policy. They've not done tax reform. They're hopefully going to get a trade deal done soon. If they don't, that'll be a terrible blow to our economy, in my opinion.
Bill, Stephanie mentioned Senator Elizabeth Warren. Right. Have you heard the latest from her today? No. She's making this case that the trade deals, TPP in particular, but the fast-track authority that the president has been seeking to negotiate these trade agreements, threatens Dodd-Frank in particular and bank regulation.
I think
Can you see how that?
No, I don't quite get the connection. I understand people who are against trade. I led the fight for NAFTA back in 1993, which was the most difficult battle I've ever been in politically. President Clinton felt strongly in it, and it did help the economy. Are there negatives to trade? An opening of trade? Of course there are. Are there negatives to technology success that we've had in this country? To employment? Yes, there are. But I think it's understanding the complexity of it and trying to bring it together, which Bill Clinton did, and I think President Obama understands. That's why he's fighting so hard for the TPP. Basically, it's an attempt to re-engage us economically in Asia. When you look at the success China's had, we better do it.
How would you grade the economic recovery under President Obama?
I think for many of us, it's been very good. For the average American,
many of us mean rich people?
Well, welfare, yeah. To be frank with you, all of the assets, look at the market, everyone follows it, you know, and it's all done well. Unemployment has come down, but overall, as we saw, I think the expectations on the numbers on Friday are probably a little more negative. So I think it's probably in a grade of, I'd probably give it a B-. But what we've got to really do is put policies together, and only Congress can do this, not the Fed. The Fed, we've been on this cocaine for a very long time. And I find it interesting when people say, you know, if the Fed changes and raises rates by a quarter, somehow the economy is going to crater. If we're that bad, we've got much deeper problems going.
Bill, whether it's over issues like trade or banking, is Hillary Clinton, whom you know well, going to have to tack to the left to fend off attacks from people like Elizabeth Warren?
I think in a primary you'll see both people in a simplistic view tacking to the right or tacking to the left. But the fact is, America in an election and a general election is one in the middle. And whoever's the nominee of the Republican Party and Democratic Party, and I expect Secretary Hillary Clinton would be, are going to have to appeal to the people in the middle because the country's so divided. They both start off with probably 47-47, and you're fighting over 6% of the American people, and billions of dollars are going to be spent basically to appeal to about 6 to 10% of the American people, which is kind of crazy when you think about it.
Is there a potential presidential candidate with an economic plan you would support?
I think Hillary Clinton will come forward over time, which is what all these campaigns. You look at the Republican candidates; none of them have really come forward yet with a real plan. And a real plan, I think the statements the Secretary made yesterday on immigration, that's part of an economic plan. Most business people believe we need immigration reform for the economy. So that's a major piece of a potential economic plan. And I think it'll be interesting to see how the other candidates, whether they're any Democratic or Republican, stand on immigration.
Bill, I never interviewed you before. What an honor.
Well,
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Stephanie. I appreciate it.
Thanks.
We'll do it again.
Thank you, Bill.
Good, Eric. Thank you.
That's Bill Daley. He's former Commerce Secretary, former White House Chief of Staff, formerly with J.P. Morgan, and now with Argentière Capital.